Welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. My name is Molly McGlocklin, and I own a company that optimizes sleep through technology, accountability, and behavioral change. Each week, I'll be interviewing world-class experts ranging from doctors, innovators, and thought leaders to give actionable tips and strategies that you can implement to become a more skillful sleeper. Let's jump into your dose of practical sleep training. Welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. As many of you know, Sleep is a Skill was created to examine the intersection of behavioral change, technology, and accountability to really improve people's sleep. And by virtue of that, we purposely haven't explored too many supplements on this podcast because I thoroughly believe that it's often inverted how we address sleep issues in kind of our modern society, where we're looking for the quick fix and the external thing that we can use to improve our sleep is the hope. And yet often, I think if we invert that kind of thinking, then we'll be left with many of the behaviors, mindset, some of the approaches that we get into in depth on this podcast that actually can make that lasting difference. And at the very same time, supplements can play a role. So I do want to do due diligence and really address some of those things that do have some research behind them and how we can make sense of this huge industry known as supplements and what makes sense to really go after for our sleep and what maybe doesn't. And one of the reasons that I do appreciate Barton Scott, who's on the podcast for today. He's the researcher and founder at Upgraded Formulas. One of the things that I appreciate about his approach is that they literally trademarked the term test, don't guess. So that's a big, important feature for me, that we're not just buying supplements for the sake of buying supplements because someone said it worked for them with their sleep, or, they've got some affiliate deal or what have you. It's really getting through all that noise and seeing what can make sense or what you might want to consider and what you might want to speak with your, whether functional medicine doctor or your doctor about, could this be right for you? So on today's podcast, Barton Scott is a biochemist, nutritionist, researcher, and founder at Upgraded Formulas. Barton is passionate about helping people address the stress of daily life, poor sleep, hormone issues, fatigue, and the toxicity of our modern world from the lack of nutrients in our soil and food and the nutrient absorption issues that we all face. Upgraded Formulas also supports charitywater.org in the great work that they do through every single sale at Upgraded Formulas. And in alignment with that, Barton and his team did hook us up with a promo code for any listeners or kind of readers of Sleep is a Skill, whether a newsletter on our site or what have you. And that is at Sleep is a Skill is the code for that. Sleep is a Skill. If after listening to this podcast and learning more, if there are particular things that you might want to take on, for instance, even the testing component, if there are, because at Upgraded Formulas, they can do hair test analysis and other things. So no matter what you're looking to do for your supplement regime, or if you're inspired by this conversation, then I'm grateful that they hooked us up with a deal there. And without further ado, let's jump into the podcast. All right, you all, I'm so excited to announce our new sponsor, Soul CBD. When I was at my lowest point dealing with my insomnia, CBD was one of the key compounds that I leaned into to combat my crippling anxiety, calm my nervous system, and support my journey to entrain my circadian rhythm. But of all the brands out there, where can you go that you can have a strong trust in their quality? Well, Soul CBD is completely THC-free, organically farmed, gluten-free, and third-party tested for toxins. Now, one of the things that is great about Soul is that they aim to help create rituals around your CBD use, and sleep and rituals are best friends. For instance, I love that Soul CBD supports a nighttime bath routine with their CBD bath bombs, which help to combat stress, soothe aching muscles with a mix of CBD essential oils and dead sea salts. Another ritual that we aim to cultivate in the realm of sleep optimization is circadian rhythm intermittent fasting, which is really all about eating your meals between sunrise and sunset. And Soul CBD has very popular gummies that can serve as a nighttime dessert or treat to look forward to without caving to ice cream. Nice alternative. My go-tos personally are their oils, capsules, topicals, and even CBD bath bombs. It's helpful for anyone who struggles with anxiety, pain, or sleep. Now, particularly when I'm traveling, I like to lean into as many things as possible to help with inflammation, and CBD does just that. Now, here's a really cool part. You get 15% off automatically and free shipping when you go to mysoul.com/sleep is a skill. I'm going to say that again. You get 15% off automatically. All you have to do is go to this link, which will be in the show notes, mysoulcbd.com/sleep is a skill. All right, let's get on to the show. And welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. I am very excited for my guest, Barton Scott. Barton, I know we've had, lots of opportunities and times to get this podcast going. And so I'm excited that we've finally made it happen. Here we are. And I know we were just talking for ages before we even hit record. There's so many things that we're looking forward to discussing on this podcast. But without further ado, thank you so much for coming, and wanted just to have you share a little bit about yourself and how your area of expertise actually links in with sleep.
Sure. So at this point, I would be one of the people that you would go to help with sleep and a lot of other issues. Our company that I started has upgradedformulas.com, because I was helping my mom with her health. And I was also trying to fix my debilitating level of brain fog that I had. I had gone through chemical engineering. I was always a huge supplement nerd from the time I was a teenager. And that was mainly because I was in sports. I was in football and track, but the main thing that I did that really required it was wrestling, because you couldn't just eat whatever you wanted and feel great. It was very noticeable. So I think because of that, because I did that at an early age for about 10 years, all through high school, I realized and just, was able to compete at a really high level, could have gone on if I wanted to in wrestling college. Didn't want to do that. Thought it'd be a better use of time to focus on something really, really hard on the mental side of things. And the chemical engineering side, I just mentioned that because ultimately, as she was getting more and more sick, I realized that medication truly was never going to save the day for anyone, that it was really only there to just cushion symptoms, and that the symptoms were there for a reason. Symptoms should be there. We should thank the symptoms, be appreciative of that. Just like when you're not sleeping well, it's because you're doing something wrong or something has happened that you're not aware of. And I know it's frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating. And it's a symptom, and you can reverse it. If it wasn't always there, of course you can reverse it. So one of the hope-inspiring things I really want to impart to people is, on a large scale, virtually everything is reversible, which means, mistakes are gifts because we're learning in the process. And it's how, and there are a lot of mistakes in the early days. Now we have a really clear system of how to help people. And I'm sure we'll dive into it. But briefly, what I did was I realized that supplements weren't absorbing. I had the background to take an industrial process and improve it and help those supplements absorb better, specifically minerals. And the result is absolutely unbelievable, life-changing stuff. We can talk about the changes before and after, and how much that improves sleep, and why we could probably charge 10x for our product and people would still buy it. It's absurd what happens when you give the body what it needs in a way that that can be understood, and when you're actually testing instead of guessing. So all of this was very fundamental to what I've studied in school and what I was interested in. And then it was just coupled with I have to work on this because the solutions that I'm being presented with are not working. The doctor-approved brands that I know are quality are not working because it turns out it's not about quality. I mean, quality should be a standard, but then there's absorption, which is effectiveness, right? So, and those are hugely different things. They're really not related very much at all. So, yeah, you want both. So that is this idea that just boils down to nutrition becomes personality. So let's check out nutrition and see where we can optimize it.
Wow. What a background. I didn't realize that about your own personal health journey and with your mom as well. And kind of having that in the background to drive, kind of having some of these breakthroughs. Wondering if you can share a little bit more about what that breakthrough ended up kind of looking like and how you were able to get at a different way of administering these particular types of supplements, what that all can look like. And then, of course, we'll talk about how that might play a role in people that are listening that might be struggling with their sleep, fundamentally just, really, really struggling. And I loved what you said about the opportunity to be grateful for these symptoms. I could not agree more. I've shared often that the creation of this entire company, Sleep is a Skill, came from my own struggles with my sleep, where at the time, I can certainly tell you that I was not finding any silver lining at the moment. But on the flip side of it, then being able to absolutely have it as one of my most important and meaningful things that happened in my life to then create this company. And I'm beyond grateful for it. And it was really, I think, changed the course of my health and maybe even the opportunity, like longevity wise, because there were so many things that I was doing that was not aiding in what was possible for me on a health perspective, a balance perspective, connecting with circadian rhythms perspective. So it really had me rework my whole life. So I love what you said about that, like actually shifting the perspective that there might be this opportunity to really get curious and get grateful about what some of these symptoms. And I know that hope that doesn't land in a way that's as if it's diminishing what people are going through, but really, I think that can empower us to have a different kind of result. But in that long sort of thing, wondering if you can speak a bit more to that topic of, how you made that innovative difference.
Yeah, the innovative difference is really that I understood that particle size was really important, and it's something we put on all our labels. The size of the minerals that you're trying to absorb, the size of your blood cell, the size of our minerals. And really what I was able to figure out is, I remember hearing this conversation about magnesium and trying to follow it for a while and going, this just doesn't make a whole lot of sense in terms of, and we do all the minerals and a lot of different blends and things, but if we just take this one, because it's popularly taught that you need threonate for this, you need glycinate for that, or citrate for this. And that's only true if you have this old absorption technology. So ours, we could use your favorite form, we could use your least favorite form, but really it's taking magnesium and being able to bind it with something your body's actually going to use, like chloride. That's the reason why we chose chloride, but it's not at all like a magnesium chloride that you would normally take. And your deep sleep tracker will show you that. So I like deep sleep specifically, but it'll also improve REM, things like that. So what we do is we get the particle size at least 1,000 times smaller than red blood cells, and they get into that red blood cell and get distributed throughout the body without having to be digested. The reason why is because if you're listening to this, you're human. If you're human in 2022, then you most likely, despite all your best efforts, have terrible gut dysfunction, or you at least have some that you can really not be aware of. And the reason why is, as frustrating and possibly triggering as that may sound, I was right there with you 10 years ago and going, what the hell? I'd like to say other things and just cuss for a minute straight, but
yeah,
we'll stick with that because I was eating a great diet, like as good of a diet as you could imagine. And I was working out, I was fit, I had good relationships. I was lucky enough to go through school, be educated, have a mind that worked, have good discipline, like all sorts of things. And yet I still felt like my health was failing because it was. And then I was born to older parents. So I was always concerned about longevity, always thinking about health span and lifespan. And I see my mother just struggling. We're all really close as a family. And I see her just going from vivacious to struggling, and then more struggling, more medication, and then surgery, and then more medication, and then removing the thymus gland and all this, and just, I remember thinking, and then she eventually passes away because of an aneurysm, which today, I can point toward calcium overabsorption, especially with the other symptoms she had. in part because of medication, in part because of just diet and the easy and the supplementation of calcium. And this is all very individual. This is why we have testing. And it sort of infuriates me to this day that people will call themselves biohackers or health optimizers or really want to just talk your ear off at a party. And yet they don't test any of their levels or that not regularly. And if they're like, oh yeah, they want help and they want to ask questions and they're willing to buy products, but they're not taking the time to test. It's like, would you, back in the days of like, what was it, MapQuest, or you'd like print out your like thing and you'd follow it. Like,
without knowing where you're at.
Yeah. It's like, well, without that map, like you don't know if you're trying to get from A to B across the country, across the state, even across town, how you're going to get there. So that you need the map, you need the test. That's why we own the phrase test, don't guess. And it's crazy. It's so how impactful. What's crazy is how impactful is when you have a good map. We use hair testing and we use consultations because most people, the third point that people really screw up. So they screw up the absorption part, not their fault at all. They screw up the testing part, not their fault at all, because it wasn't taught in med school, because the natural approach to it would be supplements and not drugs, because you're looking at elements and you're going, oh, all right, Molly is low in iron, for example, and copper and chromium and magnesium and potassium. And, Sarah's low in these, and these. Tom's low in these, and these. And there's just, even when it's done now, most nutritionists don't do it well. So like rallying against that, having really good education, offering consultation. So it's really valuable because the test itself is so valuable. You just need to interpret it. You need to essentially be able to absorb the information from the test and properly utilize it. So a lot of what I look at it from a systems perspective that is a failure in our health and society is some method or measure of not absorbing something or not delivering something efficiently or effectively. So we use some equipment and just, borrowed from a different industry that's nanotechnology, but, it's produced in an FDA inspected facility, all those things. Every batch is third-party tested. And what's cool is that when you really identify and fix these nutrient deficiencies, rant's almost over.
No, I love it. Bring the passion. Is when those symptoms that we talked about, those, as a doctor friend of mine called it, she called them sacred messengers. We wouldn't want to just turn them off if we could, right? Yes.
It'd be the equivalent of turning the kettle off that's letting you know that, hey, the water is boiling. Be careful. Like at some point, this is going to be a bad situation. So that's what headaches are. I know people no one likes headaches. No one likes waking up in the middle of the night. No one likes not being able to fall asleep. No one likes racing mind, all these different things. So to the extent that those things can be helped and supported with nutrition, we do a great job of that because of this process, because we're identifying it well. We are then interpreting what's being identified really well. And then we're really, focusing, lasering in on, all right, how do we replete the body? How do we replenish the body with nutrients that for sure you need right now, not what your husband needs, not what your sister needs, not what your mom needs, what you need, and not what you needed in the future 90 days from now, because that's also going to be different, but what you need right now. So personalized nutrition that really works. And it's crazy to see how that impacts sleep, of course, right? I mean, it's just that will work.
Absolutely. And I know as we were speaking before we started recording, this call out of, and I'd even mentioned in passing, the test, don't guess. And when you said that it was like that you had coined that or trademarked that phrase was so amazing to hear, because I think it speaks to that commitment that we're not just buying supplements for the sake of buying supplements, or we heard someone say it's important for XYZ. So now we're getting it. We're actually getting at the source of that. So, and from that place too, I always think it's important to help people paint by numbers to see what that could look, because they might hear, okay, test, don't guess, but does that mean there's a huge barrier to entry? I got to find this great doctor, functional medicine doctor, I got to spend all this money. What does that sort of testing look like for you? Because I think you've really tried to make it accessible for the average person.
Yeah, it's really affordable. And my goal, because I'm such a freedom advocate in all areas, is that I want you to be able to have control over your health. And the only way that can happen is if you can easily order from a website. So we have our website set up in a way, and all of our back-end approval set up in a way, our agreements with the labs that I trust and use set up in a way that you can go on as a normal civilian without a doctor or a nutritionist and order your test, and the test ships to you. You either take your hair sample or you get some help from your barber or, your lover, your dog, if your dog's super talented, with scissors. I mean, I've never said that before, so new stuff today.
I like it. Oh, workshop on us. Yes,
coming through. I just love the visual of a dog taking a hair sample. like Scooby-Doo takes a hair sample. It's
such a good visual.
Yeah, I feel like you'd be a great advocate. So, you send that off to the lab, and it has all the things you need: return, mailing, and the kit itself. And we've really updated that and made it beautiful and easy to use. And there's videos on the site how to do it, all of that kind of stuff. If you shave your head, then you can use underarm or pubic. If you have that, you can wait for the hair to grow out. If you need to, we can accept colored hair. It's preferred not to, but you can also let that grow out and take the 1/4 inch closest to the scalp. When you really stop and think about this, of course, you want the hair closest to the scalp. So whether it's an inch or a 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch, you want that taken from a couple different places. And it's enough. You want to provide enough so the lab can retest it a couple different times, and you just ensure accuracy that way. So we have some great protocols set up there, and we can take the same hair sample and send it to both labs and get something like sub 5% difference, which is awesome. So it's been able to prove validity. And the cool thing about all of this is that this is one way, instead of just trying to sell supplements that really work well, much less supplements that don't, is that I've always been of the mind is, let me show you whenever I can, instead of you just having to believe. Let's show you. I want you to hear what I'm saying, but I know that you'll really hear that when you feel the difference and when you see the difference. And what we found is that when people take mineral supplements that they otherwise find somewhere else, their levels don't move. And that's a real problem, because then all the symptoms stay. Because that's really what the test is it's a reflection of where you're at. And that I can look at results. Our nutrition, obviously I don't anymore, but I did for a long time, and our nutritionists now do. And, so we have a team of them, and they can look at things and they can help you improve things that will make life itself easier, like handling triggering situations. As I said earlier, nutrition becomes personality. So if you have a calcium shell, which is just like one of the many terms we use, I could describe it in more detail, but just essentially it breaks down the connection. It's a barrier between other cells and nutrients in the body, and it reduces absorption at a cellular level. It also will cause stiffness and joint pain and a lot of other unsavory things. It will cause reduced thyroid expression. That's just one nutrient. So we get insight to thyroid function, adrenal function, metabolism. Everyone likes to be at an optimal place with the metabolism, and it's just not possible if you're not measuring your nutrients and understanding where that is. So there's a lot of people that do lose weight with us, although that's not, I would say our overall program is overall wellness. And as you continue to test, this is not a one and done thing, but you test and then you get your supplements, you do feel better. You can also start supplementing with things you need, like magnesium. But when you're in this process, it's a spiral upward, essentially, where you get results, you take action with tools that really work. Maybe you eat more of certain foods, things like that are high in certain nutrients. But again, you don't know what the soil has in it. So you don't know for sure if the cucumber you're eating or the steak you're eating has what it's supposed to have, what you would think it has. So this is the reason why we third-party test each batch. We make sure that it has the purity and the potency, because we're really trying to titrate the body and remove those deficiencies, replenish. And it's just beautiful when you replenish, people just come back to life. Mm-hmm. So it's cool. It's a performance thing. It's a health span thing. It's lifespan. It's all of it.
Wow. Okay. So then for the kind of logistics of it all, if someone's listening and they say, oh, I do shave my head or I do color my hair or what have you, from this point where they make the decision, all right, I would like to get this hair sample analysis, do you suggest that they maintain doing everything as how it's been? Any supplements they're taking or even supplements that from you guys or what have you, that they keep those processes going just as how they have been living their life, no changes, and then get that hair sample so that we can see, are those things affecting? Or do you suggest more of sort of a detoxing and not using some of those things to get that sample in a particular way? Like, what's your kind of suggestion for prepping for that?
Yeah, for prepping for that, you can continue doing what you've been doing. And you can also, it's a really good question. And because I've had some friends ask me this before, and actually probably at every consultation it gets asked too, we have a starter point too, where you can get a test, a consultation for products virtually everyone needs. You can start taking those. Again, it's going to take a week or so for hair to start to work its way out of your scalp and to any distance that you can actually sample. So you can start to take those, and they're not going to affect your sample, obviously. And that's really interesting. That's cool. And then then you have your consultation. After you get your results, you book that via email, and it's either a phone call or a Zoom call. And from there, we do this with something like 40 countries around the world. And usually it's a phone call inside the US, a Zoom call outside the US. And, things really improve for people. The one thing, so hopefully I answer that question.
Great.
We can definitely come back to it. The thing I want people to understand too is with magnesium, to zoom out real quick, all minerals form the basis of hormones. If your minerals are off, or if you have heavy metals, which we also test for, and we look at the relationships for both. Let me say it a little differently. All minerals form the building blocks of hormones. So if your minerals are off, your hormones will never be accurate. They'll never be the way they could be. So you'll never feel as good. You'll never sleep as well. You'll never focus as well. You won't have the sex drive. You won't have the zest for life, all of the things that you could have had. And that's going to affect your ability to achieve goals, literally live the life you want to live, and be as present and enjoy it as much, quite literally. I mean, it's an elemental world. And what we're talking about here is testing those elements and replenishing in a relationship sort of manner, which is not just going, hey, you're low in this thing, take that. It's not that simple. Let's look at the overall picture. Let's look at this relationship, which means thyroid function, this relationship, which means adrenals. Let's understand an order and sequence of priority. Let's go forward with that plan and make it affordable enough that people can do it quarterly so they actually stay on top of their health instead of feeling good, falling off, and feeling, back where they were. You want to get on it and really have this map like we talked about earlier. So in the case of magnesium, people talk about melatonin, but you don't need melatonin if you have enough magnesium. If you're converting magnesium into melatonin because you have plenty of magnesium, you're probably going to sleep well in terms of that being an issue. Now, a lot of people will just kind of interrupt and go, oh, I'm taking magnesium, Barton. And it's like, congratulations. So was I for about a year and a half. And I was still chronically deficient in it. And that really, really pissed me off because it wasn't the only thing I was low in. And I remember thinking, this is not a quality thing. I know good brands. This is not a dose thing. I'm taking plenty. I'm taking it often enough. So it's a real thing to think about there. And the form doesn't really matter. When you think about it from this perspective, if you have a different technology, that is, if you're in the old paradigm of absorption, then yeah, sure. this for that, that for this. But we don't have to do that. The reason that I find this is incredibly interesting is when you take in, Molly, like let's say we're having lunch right now and we're eating sweet potato and we're eating, some other vegetable and steak or whatever we're consuming, it doesn't really matter. But let's say it's supposed to have magnesium in it, and it actually does. In this case, the soil was healthy and fertile, which, by the way, for people, organic doesn't necessarily just mean healthy and fertile and full of nutrients. Of course, that's a great thing to vote with your dollar. And I buy just about it, really everything organic and grass-fed and stuff. But I think it's really important. And we need to rejuvenate our soils. And that's a whole different conversation. And when we do that well, when we actually have, say, a nutrient like magnesium, our body doesn't go, oh, this is a certain type of magnesium. I'm sorry, I can't send that to your brain and that to the muscle. No, the body takes that, breaks it down, gets it small, utilizes it completely, every cell. So it's just something to remember that a lot of the things that we were taught, a lot of people don't know why we were taught that. And then when you really start to break it down, you're like, that actually doesn't make a lot of sense, or there's got to be, or maybe it makes sense currently based on the limitations of the system we're using. And if we're on a different rocket ship, then we're going to get there differently. So.
Wow. Well, okay. Actually, I think, just because you've been so immersed in this world for quite some time and using it in your own personal life too, I think we might also get some value in checking in with how you're managing your own sleep and hear a little bit too about what that's looking like for you and what we can learn from what you're doing and all that you've been navigating. So the first question we do ask all guests is, what is your nightly sleep routine looking like right now? And I'm sure, we've known each other for a little while, and I'm sure you're practicing lots of different things. I'm sure it's changing, evolving regularly, but what would that look like now?
Yeah, I try to just, hang upside down. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, exactly. We got the moon boots and yeah.
Yeah, I actually do have that.
Yeah, there you go.
But just not while I'm sleeping. Yeah, I think the easiest things that I always do are, some sleep mask. I've tried different ones. Having the room nice and cold, nice and dark, and having, if you're the type of person that really benefits from some sound, having a good air purifier in the room or some other thing that you're really happy with. So clean air, nice and cold, nice and dark. That really does it. And then as we talked about offline, upgraded magnesium, I've seen that in one night double and triple people's deep sleep. It's hard to believe, I know, because virtually all of them know enough to already be taking magnesium, but same sort of thing. It's like you're just not absorbing it. So then it's almost like you're not taking it. You're absorbing so little and your body's using so much of it that, you never really replenish, right? It's the analogy I like to use there is, imagine you're driving down the road. So the engine in your car is running and you're trying to fill up, but the rate you're filling is at the same or less than the burn rate, which is, kind of goes into that idea like we talked about offline about somewhat related, which is redlining at your desk.
Yes.
And that's really based on, so your burn rate is something I talk about a lot, and how that is so connected to just how you're going to feel and how much of these nutrients you're going to need, because you might need more than I need, even though, I weigh quite a bit more than you do and have a active lifestyle. If you have all these different things, and those could be like trauma, those could be, trapped emotion, which is essentially trauma. That's a whole different podcast, but
yes.
But
really important
cool
to remember because the dosage can shift. It might be dynamic throughout the course of your life. You might have a certain amount that you're taking, and then you have a divorce or there's a death in the family or something happens. And those stressors can be a part of the consideration for what you're taking. And I know, consciously with Sleep as a Skill, we've aimed to not really focus too much on supplements too extensively. We've done a lot of like behavioral work and what have you. And it is undeniable that when you're clear, I think that's part of the important part that we want to make, very evident, is that in order to begin that process of supplementation, you want to make sure that you're aware of what you're even supplementing for. And so I think it's one of the things that's really nice about upgraded formulas is that underscoring of taking those steps to get clear on what you're dealing with at this point in time and doing it routinely, because then things might change and then you might be wanting to address other things, and it can change the game on certain things. If you are dealing with really clear deficiencies in particular areas, you can do all the behaviors in the world, but if you're not addressing some of those, things that might not be optimal, then it's just making things so much harder and often unachievable until we address that.
Yeah, that's really well said. Yeah, thank you for letting me rant earlier about
I appreciate it.
It's such a just like flow that kind of came out. But this is important for people to know, and I don't hear anyone else teaching it quite this way. It's everything you just said. And it changes. It's important to understand this from a hormone perspective. It's important to understand, like we just talked about, from an overall health perspective, from a habits perspective, like you're talking about, from a behavioral change, like, are you looking at screens late at night? So are you eating Skittles? Is your blood sugar really off? Like we talked about magnesium a lot here, but we also have minerals that support blood sugar. And if you're not absorbing those minerals, but you are taking them, then it's almost like you're not taking them.
Yes.
And a lot of people are low in those things. And chromium, it's like, for example, is really, really hard to absorb, like really hard. There's just so much we could cover and talk about. So I'm sure after we finish, we'll be like, oh, God,
part two.
There's so much more we could have covered.
I know.
I meant to offer you too, review a hair analysis in a second when our, and just see like, hey, this is what's happening. It's like, here's your area to improve. And it's cool because you end up having more energy during the day and sleeping better, which gives you, of course, more energy during the day, as everyone, I'm sure, listening to this is very, very familiar with at this point.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have to, do a part 2 or continue this conversation, because I'll absolutely be curious to check out more. And even leading up to this podcast, I had taken some of the upgraded formulas, magnesium, in prep for this. Now, again, I often call myself one of the worst, kind of case studies, because often there's a lot of different variables that I'm doing at the same time. But in the lead up now, my deep sleep numbers, and granted, asterisk for everyone listening, a lot of the wearables, the sleep stage classifications tend to still have some things that need to be worked out, but you can often get some insight around trends. And if something changes dramatically, that can be something to be aware of. Now, I trend really high numbers of deep sleep, so it's just an odd thing, but it actually made it even more, which was really crazy. So, and this was a sample size of the last few weeks, which is really an interesting thing, especially at different points of my cycle. And, we talk about kind of cycle syncing on here and different things. So when usually there might be some shifts that really stayed constant. So I'm excited to continue to test more of that. And definitely, we'll love to share my experiences, in our newsletter and podcast and what have you. And then also, even delve into the hair sample analysis too. But because you're so aware, then, on this topic, then their next question would be around what might we see on your nightly, kind of sleep stand, or even proverbial sleep stand, because I know you travel a lot. What might be in your kind of close space?
Definitely an eye mask, definitely a bottle of upgraded magnesium. It's one of our supplements that I truly, not just saying this, truly don't travel without. Always keep it with me. A lot of my close friends do too. So unless I know for sure it's going to be like wherever I'm going, I'll keep it with me. It makes such a difference. And, with minerals, your body's currently burning. So you're going to have a temporary deficiency if you stop taking it. You're going to have, and especially if you're I've been getting back into lifting heavy again. So like, doing heavy leg workouts, you're doing these huge muscle groups. You're going to have a deficiency temporarily. So I'll dose, instead of just right before bed, I'll do during the day too. Quick side note on that, just because this is so important and it relates to circadian rhythm.
Yes.
Right. So I just want to mention and offer this free thing. So when you're taking your vitamin D and you're like, oh, cool, I'm taking, K2 and maybe K1 with it as well. Also be taking boron and magnesium and B6 with that too. So that's really, really key. So the magnesium's, in my opinion, the most important of those to also take because it keeps calcium from overabsorbing. Actually, it's really like the science is pretty clear on this. So I'd say it's a lot more than just my opinion. Humbly, if you take a high dose and you keep the calcium channel open too long in the brain, which can happen, you can actually cause cell death. So big deal. Having high calcium levels is about as terrible as having low vitamin D levels for reasons that we touched on earlier.
Sure.
But your results may vary, hence test, don't guess.
Yes.
And that whole conversation we just covered earlier, very, very important to understand. I would love for people to really make a shift in their understanding. And I haven't heard anyone mention it ever. And I know a lot of it's been covered in the last couple of years. Take vitamin D. Okay, what about the other things that support the absorption and utilization of the things that are connected to that? And that's really what I'm talking about. We have boron in our upgraded memory blend. We have, without just like, I don't know how else to say it, but we also have boron as a standalone product that absorbs well, magnesium. So, in the case of preventing a like temporary daily deficiency, if I'm going to maybe be speaking all day or be at, out doing, heavy workload physically, mentally, I may take some in the morning. I'll always take a little bit if I'm using the dropper whenever I'm taking my vitamin D and K2 and that whole blend. B6 is something we see people be really low in really often too. Don't have a B6 product to give people, but that's something that we can look at and see like, oh, again, this is why you want a consultation. Your magnesium might show high, but if we through a couple of questions, we realize, oh, there's no way that it could be high. It's actually your body retaining the magnesium, and it's not. You need something like B6 in that case to better utilize. So there's a lot of different things where you see something and you're like, let me ask clarifying questions and really listen to the person.
Sure.
So that's what our team does.
That's amazing because I think that would lead into our other question, which is around what has been the biggest change to your sleep game or biggest kind of aha moment that you've had. And I'm curious if it's in that space of really getting curious and uncovering all of these things that could be at play that take some time, that puzzle.
Totally. I would say just in general, the biggest thing health-wise has been this test, consultation, and supplements that really work. Beyond that, meditating for even a short 5 minutes before bed. Even if you meditated in the evening, 3 hours before that, really closing the loop for the day and getting clear. Drifting off like that with meditation, saying a mantra. I like mantra-based meditations. I find them more effective and also easier, which is a crazy combination.
Yeah.
But choose one. If you have a meditation practice or you're interested in developing one, the key thing that I always tell people, I've taught and led a lot of guided meditations, just different events and things. I always tell people after, like, until you found one that feels like a net that you're falling into, in other words, easy, comforting, relaxing, supportive, then you haven't found the right one for you yet. It may be the right one for someone else, but the right one for you is sometimes it's building the habit, yes, but pretty quickly it should feel soothing, it should feel calming, it should feel supportive. And until you find that, keep searching. So for me, it was mantra based.
Well, that's very, very well said. I haven't heard it described like that as a net to fall into, which I think is such a great way for us to think about something like that, especially the benefits of doing something that would have that effect before sleep. So I appreciate that so much. And actually that does lead me into, for people that are curious to learn more, to make those purchases, to follow, kind of the work that you're all doing, are there multiple kind of steps that people could take?
Sure. Website's the best place. Upgraded Formulas, Ask Barton on Instagram, Upgraded Formulas on Instagram, and YouTube, Upgraded Formulas, for a lot of really good stuff. I have an ebook that I wrote myself that covers a lot of this too. That's pretty cool. You can check that out on the website. I can give you a link to that too.
Okay, great.
Ebook. I'll make a note of that. So people can get a discount when they drop that in too. Yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff there, and more content coming out, weekly. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, Barton, this was so great to get the opportunity to actually go a bit deeper. And as I think we both anticipated, there's still a lot more to unpack, but I so appreciate you taking the time. I know you were just traveling, bouncing around, and to make space in your calendar to have this conversation. I think it's so clear that we have aligned missions on the importance of really just helping people get up under their health and be empowered. And I loved your original kind of mantra or statement or maxim that, we all have this opportunity to look to some of these things that might not be working, like our symptoms, and take steps to really not only have that breakthrough in what's happening for the long term, but actually having a better overall experience of life. So just thank you for sharing your message and for taking the time.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, thanks for touching on that again. It's just, everything's reversible,
Yes.
It's beautiful.
So great. Well,
yeah.
Thank you, Barton. It was awesome. And I know we'll be doing more together in the future. So enjoy the rest of your day. And then I hope people absolutely take those steps to learn more about upgraded formulas.
For sure. Thanks, Molly. This was fun.
You've been listening to the Sleep is a Skill podcast, the #1 podcast for people who want to take their sleep skills to the next level. Every Monday, I send out something that I call Molly's Monday Obsessions, containing everything that I'm obsessing over in the world of sleep. Head on over to sleepisaskill.com to sign up.